Hey, this is Cassidy Pope. You're listening to the Your Morning Coffee podcast with Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From Bobby Owsinski's Music 3.0 blog, 2024 top streaming stats.
From Billboard, vinyl prices have outpaced inflation. Are they finally flattening out?
And from MIDiA, mainstream is the new niche. Well, here we are jumping into our 5th year of the podcast, Jay. It's hard to believe, but boy, we are very flattered and happy that you are all here. So without further ado, let us jump into the podcast right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air, on the air, on the air, on the air, on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
1,000 hours that I can't get back. The kind of power that I can't believe you had, consuming me completely, to think that you complete me. But now I'm back to reading poetry. I'm going places I don't care that you might be. Yeah, I guess that this is freedom. No need to see you bleeding. Lately, nobody's worried about me. They say how good I'm sounding. It still gets my heart pounding, thinking of the time I wasted, baby. These days I'm perfectly fine. I don't crave you whenever I'm high, and I know that I don't have it all figured out, but I do more than hate you now. Yeah, these nights can tell them apart. No more clenched fists, punching the dark. I guess even with you gone, I kept you around, but that's what's
Good morning.
Hey, what's happening, Jay? Good to see you. Good to see you. Like that song, by the way.
Yeah, that was Cassidy Pope. And thank you, Cassidy, for that cool intro. She was singing More to Me. You know, that's from her album Hereditary. There's actually a new deluxe edition of that album that's coming out September 13th with a new track. We're really looking forward to that. So thank you again for the kind intro, Cassidy. We appreciate it.
Indeed, and you have been on the road again, to quote one of our favorite songs.
Yes, sir.
You were over in Nashville hanging out. How was the weather?
Oh,
Did you
the
have a
weather
good time?
was so beautiful, and I always have such a great time in Nashville, seeing friends and clients and colleagues, and it was just a really great week, and I got to go back to Belmont and visit the
Nice.
kind people over there, looking to do some collaboration with them. Just the best people, and they gave me a tour of the campus and some of the studios that they have and facilities. It was really, really a lot of fun.
How fun. Yes. And good meals, I've heard, and good hangs. And
Yeah.
It's a good time in Nashville.
Always.
By the way, Roster featured our friend Patrick Clifton this week. Patrick Clifton's tips on what's next in music industry strategy. You can explore Patrick Clifton's insights on navigating the evolving music industry with strategic tips for artists, labels, and tech companies. You can check out his Tunes and Tales blog. He has been with us a couple of times.
Yeah.
Super great guy.
Yeah, and that's a great blog, Tunes and Tales by Patrick Clifton. Check that out. Also, you and I had a really great interview, really great time this week with former Spotify data alchemist, Glenn McDonald. He's written the book, You Have Not Yet Heard Your Favorite Song, How Streaming Changes Music. And we did a sort of a special bonus episode to celebrate our 4-year anniversary. That was fun, right?
It was really, really fun. Absolutely. Really interesting. And, again, talking about seeing how the sausage is made and just, you hear about this word, the algorithm, and he kind of breaks it down, and it's really interesting. And that's a world that I just don't know, it's just, whatever goes into the algorithm is a skill set I do not currently have, and it's just fascinating. Fascinating really to hear the stories. And we should mention too that we had our 4-year anniversary episode last week, and you and I are pretty good at what we do, and I go back and edit and put it together, and there's not many things I have to do. But last week, for whatever reason.
Oh my God. It was like falling downstairs. There were so many edits. Typically, like you said, if we choke on something, we'll say, put a marker there, and then we'll just redo it, and we go. And you're so good at the editing part of it. But last week was a train wreck, and you wouldn't notice it by listening to the podcast because you edited all those things out. But we were cracking up because there was like one word. Every time I got to it,
you couldn't pronounce it.
I couldn't do it.
Both of us. No. And when I went back to edit it, I was literally laughing out loud as I was listening to us just gag on everything. Yeah. So we're going to try to be a little bit better this week.
Yes.
Nowhere to go but up. By the way, there's a great piece and accompanying video this week from Fred Jacobs at Jacobs Media with the headline, "The TV commercial radio should have produced, but Spotify did."
Yeah, and we've all had that moment, right? Where you pull up to work or you're coming home from work or whatever it is, and you're listening to a song and it's not over yet. And that's right. You got to sit there with the engine running and the AC on, and you might have a coworker like wave to you like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Or your significant other, in the house going, "What are you doing?" And
I see you in the driveway.
And this commercial just nails it because it shows these different people in their car while they have people waiting for them to get out, and they're listening to Adele, and they're singing along with passion. And I thought they really, really nailed it. So this piece in Jacobs Media by Fred Jacobs, they do great stuff, by the way. Many years ago, NPR made the discovery that compelling stories can keep people trapped in their cars so they can listen to the conclusion on their radios. And they wisely coined the phrase, quote unquote, driveway moments. I love that. A term that instantly became relatable to millions of their listeners.
Indeed. So these driveway moments have spawned a cottage industry for public radio's largest network. There are now collections of NPR stories that are themed: moms, dads, cats, dogs, love stories, funniest stories, and it kind of goes on from there. Now those wizards at Spotify have had a similar breakthrough, and they've now created a new ad that celebrates how drivers stay in their cars to hear the end of a song.
Yeah, earlier this week, Adweek's Doug Zanger, he's a former radio broadcaster. He wrote a story about this new Spotify campaign with a subtitle, "Brand Leverages Insight to Promote Discovery and New Playlists." Of course, anyone who's worked in broadcast radio for 15 minutes knows all about this. A great song or morning show bit or powerful interview can keep you in your car longer than you'd planned. So great piece.
I remember a coworker and I suggested she listen to the podcast Dirty John, which was unbelievably great. And she drove from LA to San Francisco listening to it, and got to San Francisco after that 4.5 hour drive, and still stayed in her car to hear in the driveway of her parents' house to listen to how it ended. And
we've all done it.
We've all been there. Another great piece that caught our eye this week was from Platform and Stream. Symphonic Distribution joins Musical AI's rights management platform for AI training.
Yeah, I thought this was super interesting, and this came up late. We always hear these stories about how people are using generative AI to learn from some body of work, and that's why they talk about ethical AI, and you need permission to use somebody's music. Well, guess what? This is one of the first things I've seen where a distributor, in this case, it's Symphonic, that they've partnered with Musical AI, And my friend Matt Adele works over there. They're doing some great work. And you can actually, if you are distributed through Symphonic, you can opt in to have your music used and actually make money from it. But don't listen to me. Let's listen to Randall Foster explain how this works. Randall Foster, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Jay. I always enjoy being on here.
I've always felt that Symphonic superpowers are two things, problem solving and monetization. And I learned about this new partnership that you have, Symphonic has with musical AI. Is this sort of a new way for your artists to monetize their music?
It certainly is, and it's pretty exciting. We're hearing a lot about AI in the trades right now. With this partnership with Musical AI, we have partnered with them to really present the opportunity for symphonic artists and clients, labels, et cetera, to opt into participating in their AI training tool. This is not a requirement for our clients and will absolutely be something they can opt into exchange for participation in the monetization downstream. The neat thing is the Musical AI's attribution system here for AI training is really the key to our involvement in totality. The technology allows for proper artist revenue shares, which is the struggle with AI these days, I think.
Can any of your artists opt in?
So currently, only artists and labels who represent and own all of their own publishing are able to participate as full ownership of the IP is needed. Now, downstream, Musical AI is working on signing up music publishers. So those that are in publishing deals will have access to this eventually as well.
Where can artists and labels learn more about Symphonic and all the things that you do?
So I think the best place to start with us is always Symphonic.com. Always updated with our newest offerings, various things that we are bringing to market for our artists and our labels. But I also would be remiss if I didn't mention blog.symphonic.com. Our blog it's incredible, and the people that provide content there, both internally and externally, are just absolutely first class. And I think the superpower, as you say, of that blog is that we're delivering timely educational material about our offerings, but also about the industry as a whole. So, AI partnerships and things like that, that's where we're going to be talking about it first.
We're big fans of the blog. Randall, thank you so much. Talk again soon.
Thanks, Jay.
Great to hear from him, and very interesting. Very interesting. Wow, really cool. Well, hey, Jay, before we jump into the stories, let's thank our sponsor. I have the hiccups too, apparently. Let's thank our sponsors, with whom we could not do the show, for crying out loud.
Yes, sir. A special thank you to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. You'll want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noise. Music.ai makes it super easy. They're embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers. Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio every day. They can process yours. Visit music.ai to get started.
Oh, awesome stuff they have. Our podcast is also brought to you by our friends over at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to build a stunning website and online store for your music in minutes. All the features you need are already built in, including dozens of fully customizable templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list, integrations with Bandcamp, SoundCloud, YouTube, Bands in Town, and more, so you can easily add content from your other online profiles, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Website plans start at just $8.29 a month, which includes hosting and your own free custom domain name. Our podcast listeners can jump over to bandzoogle.com to try it free for 30 days and use the promo code MORNINGCOFFEE, that's all one word, to get 15% off the first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com. Hypebot.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
Yeah, and a special shout out to Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Ilana Bonilla, Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Yes, Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists can access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms, and it's always on my first page on my iPhone.
Yeah, and I use them a lot. And finally, a special thank you to Billboard Pro. You want to know what everybody in the music business is talking about? Get in the know with Billboard Pro. Billboard is offering Your Morning Coffee readers and listeners a special 50% discount off the price of your subscription. So click on the link in Your Morning Coffee. That's Billboard Pro.
Indeed. So thanks to our amazing sponsors, Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. And every week I get to hang out with the effervescent, the groovy, the man about town, Jay Gilbert. He is a music industry consultant. He's a curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups, and the guy who gets to go into the American lounge at any airport he wants.
Yes, sir. Effervescent. I've never been accused of that. I get to do this show every week with my good friend Mike Etchart. He's a longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, Universal Music Group, and I thought I was the only one with good taste in music on the planet, and I was wrong. Mike has great, impeccable taste. In fact, even Glenn McDonald said that should be a box that you check in Spotify is, I have impeccable taste in music.
That is absolutely. Well, it's we found each other. So here we are doing the show, and let's jump into the stories.
So Apple Music is in the news this week. A couple of things I want to talk about with Apple Music. One is they have these really cool Apple Music Nashville sessions, and they're really good. And there's one that was released this last week with Ashley McBryde, and sort of in-studio versions. They record there at their studios in Nashville. She did, some of her biggest hits, and also a Chicks cover, all in spatial audio. Let me play you just a few seconds of this.
Mama says get my ass to church. Daddy says get my ass to work. Doctor says I gotta give up on this smoke. Everybody's got something to say about how I gotta change my ways. I've got something to say of my own. Hell, there's hell everywhere I go. I'm just sticking with the devil I know. I'm not ready to make nice. I'm not ready to back down. I'm still mad as hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to make it right. I probably wouldn't if I could. I'm mad as hell, I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should. I know.
Wow, that sounds good.
Yeah, and guess what? That is Ashley McBryde, of course, but her backing band there is Sav Madigan, Katie Larson, and Caitlin Coral from The Accidentals.
Yep. You gotta love that. So we thought it'd be fun to look at Apple Music's pre-ads. Some platforms call it a pre-save. But basically, you pre-add the song or album on a street date, and it magically appears in your library. So if you look at Apple Music's worldwide, this is worldwide on Apple Music, the top pre-ads weekly, we see that the #1 album is Sean from Shawn Mendes. Not surprising, really. Number 2, it looks like the album F1 Trillion from Post Malone. Number 3 is the new is Patterns from Kelsey Ballerini. Number 4 is Lost Corner from Kenshi Yonozu. And number 5 is Short and Sweet from Sabrina Carpenter. So it is kind of interesting to see.
It's really interesting.
Who's there, who's being
and you and
added.
You and I were talking before we hit record. We thought it might be interesting to sort of watch this fairly regularly and see what people are getting excited excited about that they want to pre-add, pre-save, that sort of thing. The other thing, before we jump into the stories, on October 1st, the Recording Academy is having Music Advocacy Day. And I saw this headline this week. It said, it's time to confront some uncomfortable truths together. Did you know that there are currently no federal regulations in place to protect against cloning of your voice using AI? And get this, if your voice is cloned under federal law, it's not possible to take legal action or to request that the streaming platforms remove the AI-generated song. Unbelievable. Wow. Artificial intelligence is a part of our everyday lives now, and it's not going anywhere anytime soon. It's really up to us to protect human music creators and call for safeguards on this Music Advocacy Day.
Right. So issues the Recording Academy is addressing on Music Advocacy Day includes establishing safeguards to protect your image, voice, and likeness from being manipulated by generative AI without your consent, requiring streaming platforms to remove a song that an AI-generated clone of your voice without your permission, stopping ticket brokers from deceptive practices like reselling concert tickets because they are made available to the general public. So a lot of stuff they're working on.
Yeah, this is really great stuff. And so I went right to the expert, our friend Todd Dupler from the Recording Academy, and he joins us this week. Let's listen in. Todd, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
So this past week, I saw an announcement about the Recording Academy's Music Advocacy Day. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So, this is our 10th anniversary of Music Advocacy Day, and it is the largest grassroots advocacy day for music. The idea is, we know we can't bring all of our Academy members here to Washington, D.C., but all of our Academy members can be an advocate right where they live. And this is our chance to connect them with their representative, their member of Congress, back at home in their community. And over the years, we've engaged thousands of Academy members to reach hundreds of congressional districts in all 50 states. And no one else really has that reach.
Where can our listeners learn more about this and participate?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I would say if you are a member of the Recording Academy, check your inbox. We're sending out emails regularly, encouraging you to register and participate and get involved. But this year, we are going to find ways for everybody to get involved, whether you are part of the music industry or just a music fan. Music Advocacy Day is going to be coming up on October 1st. And as we get closer to that date, we'll be sharing more information how you can get engaged on social media and contact your member of Congress and representative directly. So be sure to follow all of our social media accounts. On X or Twitter, it's Grammy Advocacy or the Recording Academy accounts. And then Recording Academy on Instagram and Facebook, and you'll be able to find information there.
Fantastic. See you there, Todd. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.
Wow, we're really great to have them working on all that stuff. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, well, let's jump into the first story, Jay. It's the 2024 top streaming stats. This is from our friend Bobby Owsinski's Music 3.0 blog, which we love. So many great things there. We live in a world where so much of our entertainment is consumed via online streaming, but exactly how much? Bobby says, I'm glad you asked because you'll be surprised. Forbes recently ran an article that cited these exact streaming stats.
Yeah. So Bobby breaks it down for us. The first portion is music streaming stats. So there are 90 million paid music streaming subscribers in the U.S. Music streaming services make up 89% of total music industry revenue. People spend an average of 20 hours streaming music each week. Spotify is the most popular music streaming service. And music streaming revenue has grown to $17.5 billion a year.
Wow. So here's some general streaming stats. So Americans spend an average of 3 hours and 9 minutes a day streaming digital media. Okay, that's me, if not a little bit more. 99% of all U.S. households pay for at least one or more streaming services. Very interesting. 2 at my house. Americans pay an average of $46 a month for streaming services. 45% have canceled a streaming subscription within the last year because costs were too high. That's very interesting. And on average, Americans pay for 2.9 streaming subscriptions every month.
I'm not average. I pay for a few more than that. So let's talk about video streaming stats. Netflix dominates as the most subscribed to video streaming service with 260 million subscribers. Netflix still has the most subscribers of any streaming service, and video streaming industry is valued at $544 billion.
Wow, that is a big number.
Yeah, it is.
I did a stint in the video games business, so let's go over gaming stats. So the video game market size was $217 billion as of 2022. Over 3 billion people play video games worldwide. U.S. gamers spent over $55 billion on video games in 2022. Twitch has over 140 million users per month. 1.86 billion hours of video game streaming is watched on Twitch each month. And 27% of gamers spend 1 to 5 hours streaming video games per week. And the best-selling video game console is the PlayStation 2.
Yes, sir. So no matter how you break this stuff down, our world outside of work is primarily online, right? It's true that there's something for everyone, but most users indulge in all the areas mentioned previously here, right? It's penetrated everywhere in the world as well. Perhaps the biggest difference is what devices we use to access our streams. And stay tuned for more stats on that soon. But what really jumps out at me is, because we're so focused on music all the time, when you see that $17.5 billion, you think that is so great. We're really doing well. And then you see 500 billion here. You see video and games, and it's much larger.
Yes, absolutely. Which is why the video games business, we've been around the business for a while, and every now and again, the major motion picture companies think we got to be in this business, and they jump in and then they jump out. So, and I was involved in the jumping out.
I never worked in games. I know you have, but I did work in filmed entertainment for 2 years at Fox, and it just happened to coincide when Avatar came out. And and my job was all ex-US. It was UK, France, Germany, Italy, Spain. It was all of that. And it was such a great learning experience. But the budgets that we had to build games and build apps and build websites. And again, it was, one of the most successful films of all time. But those budgets were bigger than anything I'd ever worked with, on the music side, of course.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a different world. It certainly is.
Yeah.
Let's jump into our next story, Jay. This is from our good friend Glenn Peoples over at Billboard, the Ledger newsletter. Vinyl prices have outpaced inflation. Are they finally flattening out? Experts say improvement in COVID-era supply chain issues should be good news for physical music purchasers, though other factors may lead to a continued creep in prices.
Yeah, Glenn goes on to write, anyone who has bought a vinyl record or a CD in recent years knows full well that physical music products aren't exempt from the inflation that has plagued U.S. consumers. In fact, the price of a vinyl record in the U.S. rose 25.5% just from 2017 to 2023. And that's according to Billboard's analysis of RIAA data. Slightly more than 24% increase in the consumer price index over the same time. CD prices fared a bit better, increasing just 20%.
Wow, that is a lot of that's a lot of coin, man. However, while music subscription prices are rising, consumers can probably expect physical media prices to remain somewhat level going forward. Insiders who spoke with Billboard says vinyl prices are remaining steady in 2024 after the COVID-19 pandemic created supply chain problems and raised the cost of everything from raw materials to labor. As one music distribution executive put it, those supply chain problems are flattening out. As a result, turnaround times have improved drastically as manufacturers work through their pandemic-era order backlogs. I feel like the prices will flatten too, says the executive.
Yeah, and they spoke with Bill Hine, who we had on our vinyl roundtable. Bill is a friend and colleague. He's a CEO of Pressing Business. And Bill said, quote, "Our manufacturing prices have been stable for quite a while. Freight costs can be improved if a buyer books with flexible dates, he said, and reliable sea freight is being used for more of its U.S. deliveries. Generally speaking, both air and sea freight are more predictable now than they were during the lockdown era, and prices are generally better.
Right. So since vinyl prices are based heavily on manufacturing costs, there's little to prevent prices from creeping up without sellers losing profit. Vinyl retailers set prices based on wholesale costs and their need to cover overhead and other expenses. Artists on record labels must pay the wholesale price for their physical goods and don't have control over pressing and printing costs. So says Paul Steele. He's the executive partner at AAA Management. He says physical prices for our roster of nearly 30 artists have mostly stayed the same for a decade, with small inflationary increases here or there.
Yeah, but aside from run-of-the-mill inflation, there are other factors that could push the average sale price higher. Physical music is increasingly a luxury good, a high-priced collectible item with packaging to match. Artists frequently release multiple variants of LPs with colored vinyl, and albums released today commonly have the expensive gatefold packaging, which was common, back in the 1970s.
Which I love. The way music is released in the streaming era also drives up prices. Artists take advantage of the unlimited shelf space on streaming platforms by stuffing albums with more songs at no extra cost. As Billboard noted last year, the top 10 albums' average number of songs rose from 13.2 back in 2014 all the way up to 19.1 in 2022. A double album on a vinyl record is more expensive, and as one executive notes, putting more songs on an album will often, but not always, require paying more mechanical royalties to songwriters and publishers.
That's right. Indeed, some of the most popular vinyl records at the moment are double or even triple LPs. Post Malone's 18-track 2LP album F1 Trillion sells for $45.89 right now on Amazon, and more at other retailers. Zach Bryan's 34-track American Heartbreak has 3 LPs and a $44.98 list price. And that's not to mention the more extravagant reissues such as the 2 LP, 2 CD, 1 Blu-ray package for Van Halen's For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge that carries a $99.98 list price.
Wow. So despite the increase in vinyl prices over the last several years, sales have yet to abate. Will that continue? The answer to that question will likely lie with younger consumers who have less disposable income. Our friend Michael Kurtz, co-founder of Record Store Day, says vinyl being a premium collectible product is toughest on younger consumers. While Record Store Day succeeded in helping turn a new generation onto vinyl records, younger people don't have as much money and are cutting back on their purchases. Michael said a young customer 18 months ago would come to the counter with 2 or 3 records. Now they come to the counter with 1 or maybe 2.
Wow. Catalog titles are often more affordable to help offset that frontline price creep. Michael Jackson's Thriller can be had for under $25. Fleetwood Mac's perennial top bestseller Rumors is offered in both affordable and deluxe editions. Rhino Records now playing series of compilations for artists ranging from the Stooges to Graham Parsons, John Prine, etc. Those are priced at $19.99.
Right. So the good news for all consumers is that price growth is reverting to historical norms. The average monthly U.S. inflation rate reached 4.7 in 2021, up to 8.0% in 2022 and 4.1% in 2023. This year, the average monthly increase in the Consumer Price Index, that's the CPI, is just 3.2% through July. If vinyl seems like they're continuing to creep upward, the packaging and the increasing prevalence of the double album are likely to blame.
Another great piece.
I love the double albums, though, right?
Yeah, me too. And another great piece by Glenn Peoples. If you don't subscribe to his Billboard podcast newsletter, The Ledger, make sure that you do that. And our last story from MIDiA. The headline is "Mainstream is the New Niche," and that's by managing director and analyst over there, our friend Mark Mulligan.
Yes, indeed. So 5 years ago, we made the call that niche is the new mainstream. This is Mark speaking, by the way. Today, this dynamic is so fundamental to music and culture that we are firmly in the stage of second-order consequences. Superstars are getting smaller, the long tail is getting longer, and rights holders are bringing in earnings thresholds to keep that growing long tail at bay. But it was a blog post by my colleague Tatiana. Did Charlie XCX go mainstream, or did the mainstream just go niche? That got me thinking whether now, 5 years in, the mainstreaming of niche has reached a tipping point.
Yeah, that's Tatiana Cirasano, our friend of the podcast, and just a fantastic analyst over there. The dynamics of Charlie XCX's career, 25,000 RSVPs in 1 hour for a 1,000 cap boiler room gig, for example, they feel very much like those of Taylor Swift. Of course, the sheer scale of Swift fandom machine is the big difference, or is it? Is mainstream about actual numbers or reach, or perhaps both? In fact, it's best measured in 3 ways. Number 1, absolute scale, how big are the numbers? Number 2, relative scale, how big are the numbers compared to others? And 3, active reach, what share of the total audience does an artist have?
Right, so let's use Taylor Swift as today's biggest mainstream music artist to test each. So when we're talking about absolute scale, there's no getting away from the fact that everything big has got smaller. Michael Jackson, arguably the equivalent of Taylor Swift during the peak CD era, shifted 500 million units worldwide when units actually meant units. By comparison, Taylor Swift has fewer than 200 million album equivalent sales, which of course means this figure is increasingly made up of streams being converted into, in quotation marks, sales. Given that so much of streaming behavior today is radio-like, we would really need to add an estimate of total individual radio listens to Jackson, which would result in a figure that would comfortably end up in the tens of billions in equivalent sales. Yes, Jackson's career happened in a different era when fewer artists were competing and linear broadcast platforms dominated. But that is the entire point of fragmenting fandom.
Yeah, that's absolute scale. Let's look at relative scale. It's abundantly clear that Taylor Swift has more streams and ticket sales than pretty much everyone else. She's the biggest artist on the planet right now. She has mainstream awareness. But does that make her actual listenership mainstream? Well, she certainly has more mainstream culture clout than her peers, managing to become part of the mainstream media narrative. Look no further than the Financial Times running pieces on Swiftonomics. This is thanks in large part to the fact that she built her fandom pre-fragmentation when music was still much of a part of the mainstream culture. It's an advantage enjoyed by other artists like, Beyonce, but it came up in a pre-streaming peak and therefore pre-fragmentation.
Right, but an FT subscriber reading a Swiftonomics story does not necessarily make them a listener. And I'll hazard a guess that particular conversion rate is not one to sing about, he says. Having mainstream media reach is not the same as being a mainstream artist in terms of listenership, even though the two things did largely go hand in hand once upon a time. So simply being bigger than the rest does not inherently equate to being mainstream. In the same way that the fastest kid at school could leave her classmates for dust, but not even qualify for national heats, let alone compete with the fastest runners in the world.
Yeah, let's look at reach. Active reach is where the picture really comes into focus. The best-selling albums in U.S. history, when sales were sales, were the Eagles, their greatest hit, 71 to 75, with 38 million sales, and Michael Jackson's Thriller with 34 million. Based on the respective populations of the year of release by those albums, the Eagles were bought by 17.4% of the U.S. population, and Michael Jackson was bought by 15.9% of the population. Wow.
So Taylor Swift's best-selling U.S. album was 1989. That sold 6.5 million copies, while The Tortured Poets Department sold 2.9 million. As a share of the total U.S. population, they represent 2% and just 0.7%. Taylor Swift's biggest-selling release has 12 times less reach than the Eagles, while her latest release has less than 1% reach. However, note, with modern sales figures including streams, Swift total global audience may be bigger, as many different people's streams could add up to one sale, but equally, it could be lower, as one person's streams could add up to multiple units.
Interesting. Of course, judging Swift's reach only by album sales, an aging format, and essentially an extinct one for much of her listener base, that's sort of unfair. Yet, interestingly, the 1% figure doesn't apply to Swift's album sales. The record-breaking Eras Tour sold 4.5 million U.S. tickets, which is just over 1% of the U.S. population. And Swifties being Swifties, there was probably a decent number who saw the show more than once, meaning that percentage is likely a bit smaller.
So meanwhile, Swift's 26.1 billion Spotify streams in 2023 made her the most streamed artist of the year. Yet that was just 1.4% of all global Spotify streams. Now, 1.4% of global streams for one artist is a massive achievement, but in the analog era, so many people would have listened to the biggest artist of the day because radio was the main consumption format. And on radio, everyone listens to the same song, whether they like it or not.
Right. And Mark goes on to say that none of this is really a critique of Taylor Swift, but instead a reflection of the modern music business where she is a part of. She clearly is a huge, successful artist at the top of her game, but the game is not the same as it once was. It's not that Taylor Swift is not huge. She is, but she is not mainstream because mainstream itself is now niche. Charlie XCX shows how successful you can be when you understand the power of niche. Niche does not inherently mean small, and it's potentially huge. The simple, hard truth is that now everything is niche, even mainstream. Great piece by Mark Mulligan.
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
guys over at MIDiA, they knock it out of the park.
They do. And it's interesting to kind of, it's essentially saying, the rules in the game have changed. It's not that they're better or worse. It's just that they're different. And
it's a new world. For sure.
If you look at the future with kind of through the lens of the past, sometimes that doesn't really work. You kind of have to rejigger your kind of perspective. So great article. Like you said, those folks over there are really
the
sharp
best.
And really interesting to hear their perspectives. But on that note, we got to wrap up the show. If you enjoyed the show, we would certainly appreciate it if you tell one friend. Big thanks to Bandzoogle, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town for their participation and help. We certainly appreciate it. So on behalf of Jay Gilbert, my good friend, I am Mike Etchart, and we both say thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.